For 3,000 years, China was at the height of human civilization. When Europeans, not my word, Henry's, when Europeans were still living in caves, China was already at the height of civilization, and that's true. Now, the last 200 years, China was really down and out. So much so that Hong Kong was taken by Britain from 10,000 miles away. And so, for China, today's to rise is an inevitability back to.
董事长陈启宗坐在外媒演播厅，面对主持人关于中国政治野心的追问，直接甩出一句让全场愣住的话：欧洲人还在住洞穴的时候，中国已经处于人类文明的高度了。这是基辛格说的。这位香港商界大佬用3000年的文明纵深，把中国崛起威胁论碾得粉碎。更狠的是，当主持人将中国海军建设定性为扩张野心时，陈启宗反手就是一个灵魂拷问。1996年，克林顿派2艘航母到台湾海峡，中国什么都做不了。如果你是中国人，会打电话给美国第7舰队说请帮帮我吗？
And the leading role of the US has never been questioned. Would you share this analysis?
Would I share this assessment?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you have 1.38 billion people in China, call it 1.4. They were very poor 30-some years ago. So for them to seek a better living is a very natural thing for anybody anywhere in the world. And so the rise of China is an inevitability. As Henry Kissinger says, for 3,000 years, China was at the height of human civilization. When Europeans, not my word, Henry's, when Europeans were still living in caves, China was already at the height of civilization, and that's true. Now, the last 200 years, China was really down and out. So much so that Hong Kong was taken by Britain from 10,000 miles away. And so, for China, today's to rise is an inevitability back to the trend line of history of 3,000 years. Could 200 years of bad history reverse 3,000 years of glorious history? Probably not.
But what he was talking about was not just economic growth. We have been used to economic growth in incredible figures in China for decades now. What he's talking about is that in addition to this amazing economic growth, there is now a new political ambition which became visible for just some time ago. So I think when he was speaking about the end of an era, this was more in a political or geopolitical aspect he meant it.
The reality of human history is that you can never totally divorce economics from politics. Economics will always bring political power. And political power is necessary to keep your economic growth. So get used to it. When you have a big country like China, 1.4 billion people rising economically, it is absolutely natural that political power will accompany the economic power. If not, you will not be able to maintain that growth. I cite you an example. China, 20% of the energy need is imported. Right now, not quite that much, but very soon it'll be 20%. So, how many of you have watched a movie called Captain Phillips? Tom Hanks? You know that movie? Good. Young people have watched it. So imagine a Chinese ship, a tanker, coming out of the Gulf of Hormuz, met some Somalia bandits. They couldn't tell the difference between Captain Phillips and Captain Chan. And they go after the Captain Chan ship. What are you going to do? How do you protect your energy security? Would you call the 7th Fleet of the United States and say, please help? Don't forget, 1996, 2 aircraft carriers from the United States 7th Fleet Navy parked outside of Taiwan, and there's nothing. Clinton sent them there. There's nothing China could do in 1996. That woke up the Chinese and say, wow, there's just 2 battles, 2 aircraft carriers from America. And America has 14 of them, by the way. 2 of them, the whole of China can do nothing. And so would they call the Seventh Fleet if they mistake you for Captain Phillips? So no choice but to have a navy in order to protect your security of energy, right?
Sure, but in the West we've got the impression that now from the need of protection, having a navy, an army, there is a new political will to play a certain role on an international level. Is there any moment for you, a specific moment you could pinpoint when these political ambitions of China became clear in the near past?
I don't think that you can pinpoint a time. Perhaps the 1996 two-aircraft carrier sent by President Clinton, was as close to it as ever. That woke up the Chinese. You have no choice but to protect your own economic interest. But that said, China is evolving gradually economically, and the political and military need to protect your economic interests will grow together with the economic rise. So the question rather should be posed to the United States. What kind of relationship do you want to have with China? If you want to have a good relationship with China, China can easily become more like Japan. Although, by the way, Japan has the second largest defense budget in the world. Okay, so it's up to the United States what kind of a world of tomorrow you want. China is just doing what is necessary.
In the history of China, in the sense that, we have returned to our rightful sort of stature in the community of nations, and we're no longer going to stick to that policy of, reluctance and hiding our true intentions?
That is at a day and age when China was very poor. Its reliance on international affairs is very limited. So of course you do that, don't cause trouble. But as I said, now two things happen. Number one, China's economy is so integrated with the rest of the world. Energy, as I mentioned, also there's food security. And so there is the need that stems from economics, number one. Number two, you have the United States. The United States, everywhere the Chinese turn, Africa, Latin America, Middle East, everywhere you go, America just slapped you on the face. That is just a fact. Just check history of the last 30 years, in particular the last 20 years. So the Chinese say, hey, how do we defend ourselves? We have no choice but to take measures that is commensurate with our economic prowess today. So the fact that enunciated that doesn't mean that it happened that day. It's such a simple-minded way of looking at things that it happened that day, it changed everything. No, there is 30 years of economic development before that gradually drive China into a position where it's so totally dependent in the rest of the world. And America acting in its own way that the Chinese feel very threatened. So eventually, you have no choice but to have a statement such as...
So it's Chinese foreign policy, as you said, about economic interests. It's also about containing the US. I'm trying to paraphrase you here, that he believes it's high time for China to transform itself into a mighty force that could lead the world on political, economic, military, and environmental issues. So could you tell us what exactly he has in mind? What are those projects that he's talking about?
You mentioned about China containing the United States. Does China have the ability to contain the United States? Or has it been America that has been containing China? And if somebody wants to contain you, what are you going to do? Lie down and say, rape me? What do? You have to do what is necessary for your own people. Of course. So, I think you asked the wrong question. It is not China who is containing the United States. It's the United States who is trying to contain China.
point taken.
So China have no choice but to react, respond. Then to your other question about what it means. Well, if you're a big guy like China, there are certain responsibilities. And in fact, a lot of people are accusing China today for not taking enough international responsibility. So China tried to take some international responsibility, then you come around and say, hey, what's your intention? No-win situation. Such is the world. Wake up, grow up, get used to it. That's the real politique, like it or not. The only thing you can do is be strong enough to protect yourself, economically, militarily, and otherwise, right?
Right.
So China is doing any other country would do, except that China is a big country. I walk into any room, nobody notice. I'm 1.6 meters. Nobody would notice me. But if I'm Yao Ming, you know Yao Ming? 2.26 meters, the basketball player, NBA. He walk into any room, he'll be noticed. Like it or not, China is Yao Ming, 1.4 billion people. So whatever they do is in the limelight. They cannot hide like I can. So get used to it. There is a LeBron James, Yao Ming, Shaq O'Neal in the world scene today.
And if I were to press you to give us 3 important projects, be it in the realm of politics, be it in the realm of military engagement or economic, in the economic field, what would those 3 projects be?
I would say number 1, energy security. Number 2, food security. Number 3, be a respected member of the international community. That would be my 3. Any problem with that?
I didn't get your point. Are you...
Because America has been moving in a particular direction now for, 15, 20 years, if you like, containing China. So I suppose you can cross a threshold and get to the next phase. Is that the case? I don't know. What do I know? But what I do know is that there has been a gradual deterioration of the relationship between the United States and China. And the reason is very simple. The United States want to contain China.
Okay.
So you have to do your best to protect yourself, that's all.
An American journalist from the New York Times, but being correspondent in Beijing, Edward Wong, just wrote this month that from trade to internet, from higher education to Hollywood, China is shaping the world in ways that people have only begun to grasp. What is your impression? Do you think the West is aware enough of these epochal changes happening?
Whether they are or not is one issue. What is changing is, in actuality, is another thing. Years ago, I gave a speech that says that by China's being weak and out of the international community, they deprive mankind of 20% of the human ingenuity, creativity, intellectual prowess in the world. China has about 19-20% of the world's population, right? And so you never see anything. How many of you have watched a Chinese movie 20 years ago? How many of you have heard of a Chinese artist or a Chinese musician? Hardly. Because China was poor and out of sync with the rest of the world. But today, as China is economically integrated into the global community, as it gets a little wealthier, surely it will unleash the creativity and artistic expression of 1.4 billion people. In that sense, you will be watching movies from China. You will be listening to Chinese artists playing. You will be going to galleries with Chinese painters. These are inevitable things, which I think is wonderful. Why not? So I think that China will, no question, contribute much more to the global community in many, many fields.
In the coming years. So what could this be?
Well, as I mentioned to you, some Chinese movie will likely win the Oscar one of these days. That would be a contribution.
One.
I listened to Daniel Baum with Dr. Paulson the other day, and I saw him over breakfast the next morning at the same hotel. I almost went up to him and asked, have you heard of a young pianist by the name of Wang Yujia? Any of you have heard of the pianist by the name of Wang Yujia? No? No. You will. She records for Deutsche Grammophon. She was a Gilmore Young Artist recipient 2012 or something like that. So you will be hearing these names. There is a student of mine in Berlin by the name of Ning Feng, who is a violinist. And the then premier of China, Wen Jiabao, was there. So they will contribute in many, many ways.
But these now you are telling about cultural or art or music. I mean, there are still other. It's beautiful and necessary, absolutely. But there are still other great responsibilities, and
such as
making the world a better one.
Good.
Doing your part to have a clean environment.
Good.
Respect things you're not respecting, perhaps up to now in China.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Let's take some of those as an example.
Yeah.
Who have been more contributing to African nations in the last 20 years? Mm-hmm. The Europeans were colonialists in the old days. I made a mistake of saying to the king of Belgium one time, I used the word Congo. The Chinese just traded with Africa. They have their problem, I know that. Especially the private companies. The state-owned enterprises are far better, by the way. And so the model of economic development that China has just underwent in the last 30 years, in my opinion and that of many economists, is far more akin to the condition of many developing economies, such as in Africa and in other parts of the world. And so China can be a great model for a lot of these economies to learn from.
For the African economies?
Yes, mm-hmm. Or in poorer economies in general. You talk about the green, the environmental issue. Mm-hmm. In 1974, when I was entering MBA school, as you mentioned, Nora, I was in Southern California, Claremont Graduate University, and I was driving up the hill. I cannot see the hill in front of me, because in 1973-74, Los Angeles was such a disaster mm-hmm. in the environment. I have photograph here, 1952, London. Remember that? People have to wear masks on the street. So 1952, Britain. 1972, 73, Los Angeles. Now you have 2017, China. Economic development will produce a lot of terrible effects to the environment unless you are really enlightened. But it's not enough to be enlightened. You also need money. George Shultz asked me, George Shultz, the former Secretary of State of Ronald Reagan, asked me maybe 15 years ago, how come China does not build electric cars? All electric cars. I said, good, wonderful idea. 50, 20 years ago, China does not have the technology even for combustion cars, let alone electric cars. So I said, George, if you want China to do that, who's going to pay? 15, 20 years ago, China was poor. You want them to build all electric cars, and at that time, electric cars are not as efficient as it is today. Are you willing to pay? I shut them up. If the West want China to take care of the environment when they were still poor, who's going to pay? Now, let me tell you something also. Today, I can assure you, the leaders in Beijing are far more enlightened than the leaders in Washington, D.C. concerning the environment. Now, let me tell you something also. Let me tell you also something. You know the U.S. Green Building Council? They take care of building, make sure that they are green, right? Mm-hmm. The first shopping center that has gold standard of U.S. Green Building Council, what country is it in? China.
Does it start with a C? Yes.
Second one, China. Third one, China. Fourth, fifth, sixth, China. The fact that they're all done by my company is coincidental, okay?
I think that point is definitely taken, Ronnie. But
Good.
Let's come back to the sort of with great power comes great responsibility thing. You talked a lot about the environment and what China does to protect it. A different issue that comes to mind is migration, which is a global concern. Now, could you imagine that China takes in refugees from, say, Syria or other parts of the Middle East, or even closer to home, maybe from Myanmar? Is that an issue where China could also show responsibility?
First of all, I'm not sure if anybody have asked. Why don't you try?
So if they did, what
You
would be China's response?
I don't know. But I do know history. 1,000 years ago, there were tens of thousands of Jews, at that time refugees. Where did they end up? Nobody took them. China did. 500 years ago, there were 300,000 Arabs in southern China. What did China do to them? Welcome them. In fact, sorry to mention this, but in Second World War, when the Jews were persecuted in this country, the Brits did not take them. They traveled all the way to Hong Kong. They met a British colony, don't accept them. They went to Shanghai, China took them. The first place that somebody will take the Jewish refugee was China.
So that's an historical example, and that's much appreciated. But let's talk about the present.
That's why I suggest you ask them if they would take them. Mm. Because China is very big. China is the most populated country in the world. Will they accept? I don't know. I know what your country would do. I don't know what China would do.
What would you advise China to do?
Depends on the situation. Hypothetical questions are not as meaningful.
Still.
I don't know. I really don't know the answer. So all I can do is tell you what history has been. Mm-hmm.
The title of these discussions is The World in Disorder or World Order Under Pressure. And I think there's enormous amount of uncertainty regarding the current world order. But there are some things perhaps you can agree on. One is China has arrived or is in the process of arriving on the great power stage. The second is the Western-dominated order is changing, is in crisis, possibly crumbling. Do you see a relation between the 2 points? Is perhaps one point favoring the other one?
What do you mean by 1 point?
The second one of the Western world in disorder, making the role of China on the international scene even bigger than it was possible before.
Whether the West is in disorder or not, the rise of a big country like China, no choice, will change the world order. You don't need to intentionally change anything. Your presence will change everything. Today's trade of China is about the same as that of the United States. So the two of them has trade of what? 4 trillion, 5 trillion? a piece, import, export, add together. And so, when you are that big, you will change the world whether you like it or not. The question rather is the rest of the world willing to accept that 1.4 billion people want to better their livelihood? Is that legitimate? So the question should not be addressed to me. The question should be addressed to ladies and gentlemen in the audience.
当主持人说西方没意识到中国的时代性变化时，陈启宗冷冷回应：中国弱小的时候，人类失去了全球20%人口的创造力。你们看过中国电影吗？听过中国音乐家吗？没有，因为中国穷。现在中国富了，你们会看到中国电影、中国艺术家，这是不可避免的。但最精彩的还是关于责任的交锋。主持人质问中国为何不多接收难民，陈启宗搬出历史：1000年前犹太难民无处可去，是中国接纳了。2战时英国拒绝犹太难民，他们辗转跑到上海，中国第一个接纳了他们。当主持人追问现在呢，陈启宗淡淡一句：我不知道，但我知道你国怎么做。这不是回避，这是把道德制高点的皮球踢回了提问者脚下。陈启宗的每一句话都在解构西方的提问霸权。你们问中国为何有野心，他反问你们为何容不下14亿人享过好日子。你们问中国为何扩军，他反问你们为何把航母开到家门口。而他那句中国就像姚明，走进任何房间都会被注意到，这不是野心，这是体型，恰恰是对大国原罪论最精准的注脚。不是中国要改变，是世界